Frank, let's start by talking about the big story in town. The WBC, they've pushed back the purse bids by a week. Why have they done that?
I think because, people have not had enough chance for discussions regarding, between the parties to try and get the fight on. So they give everybody another week to see if anything can be done. But, come next Tuesday, if we don't agree terms, then we do the purse bid.
And are there any negotiations going on at the moment between your side with Tyson and the other side when it comes to Dillian Whyte?
There's been there was some discussion, but it all ground to a halt for a while. And I don't want to get into a lot of detail at the moment what's going on with Tyson, but all become hopefully will be revealed soon as far as what's happening with him. But the situation as regarding the Dillian Whyte fight is concerned is that the purse bid is next week, and that is on the basis of an 80-20 split in favour of Tyson.
And do you think that the purse bids will go ahead next week and we will get some clarity on this fight?
Look, Tyson wants to fight. He's made it very clear he wants to fight in the first quarter, and we're working hard to make it happen for him. We're all doing that between us to make it happen. And that's really where we're at. He's in real, strict training at the moment. He's training very hard. I spoke to him again this morning. He called me this morning. We spoke, and he just wants to get out there. So we're doing our best to make sure it happens for him.
And how is Tyson? You mentioned you spoke to him earlier today. Has there been a frustration from everybody that he's not been able to really press forward with this WBC situation, I guess, in the back of everybody's minds?
Yeah, we're all frustrated. A big frustration is that we've not managed to get on yet the fight between him and Usyk for the 4 belts. That's the real fight that we all want to see. In the meantime, as we all know, the WBC have ordered the fight with Tyson. He's mandatory against Whyte. So that's been a bit of a diversion. What's his mindset? His mindset, he just wants to get in the ring. He doesn't care who he fights. He just wants to get in there. He's had one fight in, nearly 2 years now. It's a long time.
And you said before that 26th of March is a date that you're looking at for Tyson. But if this fight between Whyte and Fury goes to purse bids, do you think that's the fight that could take place on the 26th?
Well, it depends what happens. 24 hours is a long time in boxing, and we've got a week, so a lot can happen during that week, and we'll see how it all pans out, as I said.
Do you think the heavyweight division is in a bit of a mess at the moment because of this situation that's ongoing?
Well, look, there's a rematch clause with Anthony Joshua and Usyk anyway. So that was part of the deal, what they decided they did between the two parties, even though I think it was a mandatory, but that's the deal they did. So that's got to be resolved as well. Is it a mess? I think their rematch is a quite an intriguing fight in as much, what can Joshua do this time round? Can he do anything different? And as far as Tyson's concerned, Dillian Whyte's been spouting off for a long time. He's not had his opportunity. What is it, 3 years? Well, that's not down to us, that's for sure, and he's had a promoter who actually promoted the world champion who's holding 3 of the belts. So that's his position. And again, as far as Dillian Whyte's concerned, he turned down a fight against Anthony Joshua, and I think that was an 80-20 situation. So they were his choices. And in the meantime, Anthony Joshua fought Ruiz, got beat, and Ruiz obviously done it I'm sure he didn't get paid a fortune, but the second fight he did. And it's the same with Usyk. Usyk done it on an 80-20 split with the champion because, let's be honest about it, it's Joshua who was putting the bums on seats. So, is it a mess? In some ways, it's a little bit messy, but I think this year it will all sort itself out. And in the meantime, in the wings, we got 2 of our guys who are both ranked number 1. In Joyce, he's ranked number 1 with the WBO, and we've got Daniel Dubois, and I expect WBA, as he's their number 1 official challenger. I'm hoping they're going to be stating that Bryant will now have to fight him because Manuel Char's not in there anymore. So they're in good positions, and hopefully by the time we do get to a unified champion, they'll be in mandatory spots where they'll be there'll be challengers. So there'll be plenty of British interest moving forward in the heavyweight division.
I wanted to ask you about Daniel and Joe shortly because they're in such great positions at the moment. It's set to be a huge year for them. But just quickly going back to this situation with Dillian Whyte and his team, and you mentioned the situations where he has had opportunities potentially in the past to fight for a world title. Do you think it's something his team really want? Because it feels like it's a fight that could have maybe happened beforehand, but maybe on the other hand, they're trying to get the best deal for their man as well.
Well, their deal's been no deal. You know, that's where they've been. They haven't had a deal. I mean, up until this thing with Tyson, in 3 years, they've just been sitting around. You know, Tyson was out for nearly 3 years, come back and fought for a world title in 6 months. So we've done a good job for him in getting him in that position. As far as Dillian's concerned, you know, whatever's happened, he just needs to look in the mirror. That's where the reason he's in the position he's in. In the meantime, he's had some fights with, you know, some domestic bust-ups, and was it he fought Pulev, whatever it was, he fought him and lost one of them. That's his chosen path. That's the road he's gone down, and now he's got to make some decisions. If he's going to carry on fighting the WBC, if he's going to keep fighting on about these splits, I don't think he's going to get anywhere with the splits based upon the fact rules are rules, and their rules are very specific as regarding these big fights and fights involving champions who earn big money, as Tyson does, that they gauge what the percentages are based upon the contracts that have been lodged for their previous fights. And I think I've said it many times, Dillian, and this becomes knowledge because obviously they know what Tyson's earned and we know what he's earned, and he earned 300 grand for his last fight. And I think the highest he's ever earned, according to the WBC, is 500 grand. So Tyson's, you know, in 8 figures. So that's why he's never going to win it. Never going to win that situation.
Bob Arum was speaking before, and you'll be aware of what he said about Helenius or Ruiz Jr. being potential opponents. But do you think that Whyte will be Fury's next opponent if that takes place March, potentially April?
I you know, unless he gets a unification fight, Tyson, and everybody agrees to step aside, yes, I think that's the road we'll be going down. But if he's going to keep messing around, and there's a big, and he's got legal action going on at the moment with the WBC, which has still got his arbitration hearing, which is, I think, due to take place in March. If that's still going on, Tyson's not going to sit on his backside. As I mentioned at the start of this interview, you know, he's been out of the ring for nearly 2. He's had 1 fight in 2 years. That's no good. So he's made it very clear, and he's very emphatic. He wants to fight, and our job is to deliver him a fight. If it's Dillian Whyte, fantastic. If it's Usyk, whatever it may be, it is what it is.
Is he in a way being punished because of what's going on with Dillian Whyte and the WBC?
Yeah, he's the victim in this. He's the guy who's the champion. He's the one who's gone out and, you know, and put that, and basically he's the #1 heavyweight in the world. Gone out and, you know, gone to the other guy's backyard 3 times and fought him in the other guy's backyard, done the business, and, you know, he's done it in absolute style, in you know, in epic fights. The 3 fights were all different fights, but they're all bloody, certainly the first 2 were brilliant fights, and the last one was an epic. And he should be allowed now to get on with his career. He shouldn't be held up because of whatever's going on between Dillian Whyte and the WBC. I don't know actually what is going on between them, what the argument is, you know, or what the arbitration is, whatever it is, it is. But one thing's for sure, that 80-20 split, there is no way we're going to be budging on that. That's for sure.
You mentioned earlier about Joe Joyce and Daniel Dubois. Let's take Joe first, because I saw today that he's going to be back and able to punch again in 6 weeks' time. So what are you thinking of him in terms of that date in April? Because it was going to be February the 12th, but of course that's been pushed back. With that being pushed back, have you had a change of heart in terms of potential opponents and what sort of fight he'll be in?
Look, that for his injury is not a good injury for a boxer to break your wrist. I mean, I've seen the X-rays of it. If he can punch in 6 weeks, he's still got to be able to train and spar. He won't be sparring for 6 weeks, that's for sure. So end of April, May, with a bit of luck, if everything goes well, he'll be out, and we want to get him out. So, you know, it's a great shame that he's not been able to capitalise on his position, but we've got to make sure he's busy. You know, he's very He's a very crucial part of Queensberry's plans moving forward. We want to keep him busy, and he wants to get in a position where he becomes a mandatory to the eventual unified champion.
And Daniel Dubois, you mentioned Trevor Brown earlier. Do you think that Trevor Brown could be Daniel's opponent when he fights in March, which is what you're planning?
Well, I hope that the WBA will do the right thing by him. You know, he's the next guy in. On their latest ratings, he's marked down as OC, and that's the official challenger. So I don't see how they can allow Bryant, in my opinion, to be having fights against anybody else. He should be fighting our man. You know, and he wants to get out and he wants to fight Daniel. I mean, he's he's had a couple of good wins. It was a shame that he couldn't fight in December as was planned, but you know, he had a problem and couldn't travel as a result of it. But now he's okay, and we can get him out, and he will fight on the 19th at Wembley.
And finally, let's talk about the light heavyweight division, because that's arguably as exciting as the heavyweight division from a domestic point of view. And it was such a blow for Callum Johnson, wasn't it, missing that fight this weekend against Joe Smith Jr. But what does that mean for Anthony Yarde and his situation?
Well, I mean, obviously, answering first with Callum. Callum's distraught. And who knows, we may be able to resurrect the fight. Fingers crossed we can. In the meantime, Anthony is the official challenger. He's number one. Joe Smith is due and mandatory, providing he comes through his fight against his substitute opponent this weekend. And we'd love to do that fight in the UK. We really would love to do that. I've been talking to Bob Arum about it. And if we can do that fight, I believe that Anthony's got a superb chance of beating Joe. It's a tough fight. I think he can win it, especially based off his last performance. And then maybe, or I'm quite sure we can get on then a defence against Callum, which would be an all-British affair. You know, that's what, in an ideal world, I'd like to see happen. But we'll see how it all pans out. But, you know, Anthony will be out. Whatever happens, we want to get him out in March too.